More than 3 weeks since Senator Mitch McConnell's high-profile hospitalization, we are now hearing about calls that members of Congress and political commentators are having with the senator. I'm Isaiah Kim Martinez, joined by Doug Profit. Doug, this is big news.
Well, it is, Isaiah, because it's McConnell was hospitalized June 14th. This is the first time we have had any real substantial conversations. Of course, we know this is being triggered by the reports that he was in dire shape and may not come out of the hospital. Now we're getting reports of lengthy conversations over the past 2 days. I think we're going to see in these statements, and I know we're going to read a couple of them, it's interesting to me that we're not hearing them report what McConnell said back to them.
Right.
This is a one-sided conversation about what they discussed, but they are reporting full and lengthy conversations that are detailed.
And all pointing out 20-minute conversations, really leaning on the length of these reported calls with...
And the one we're going to talk about from Scott Jennings, I want to point him out because Scott Jennings is a lightning rod. People have
Republican.
their opinions of him. He is from Kentucky, lives in Louisville, founded a PR firm here in Louisville called Run Switch.
Longtime friend of Mitch McConnell.
He's a longtime friend of Mitch McConnell, and he's CNN's senior political commentator. Now, I view his as the most credible because he has always been close to Senator McConnell.
Yeah.
And he, remember McConnell put him in charge of Daniel Cameron's gubernatorial campaign to run it. He would get off the buses around Kentucky when Cameron was campaigning.
And here is what Scott Jennings said. This kind of came into our newsroom, like Doug said, was sort of the breaking news that we've been following. He said, quote, "I spoke to my old friend Mitch McConnell this morning, the senior senator from Kentucky. He says he's still recovering in the hospital. We talked for just shy of 20 minutes about Iran, Ukraine, the unfolding situation in Maine, my visit to the TR Presidential Library, referencing former President Theodore Roosevelt, and even a little bit of Senate history. I told him we want to see him back at work as soon as possible."
Let's talk about that line.
Yeah.
Key date we need to keep in mind. That is Monday, July 13th. That's when the Senate comes back.
Right. They've been on recess.
Full legislative session.
Yeah.
A lot of people early on were speculating, would Mitch McConnell return for that? It's getting close. That's coming up this in a few days from as we're recording this.
Yeah.
I don't know what his current shape is or whether he would be there Monday, July 13th. But we already know that the Republicans have desperately needed his votes. They've lost out on some legislation some key votes because he wasn't there.
Yeah. And Doug, to the point that you made earlier, and we don't want to overread into this, but a lot of these statements that we're seeing, and we're about to read another one from the U.S. Senate whip, are essentially these folks saying that I told Mitch McConnell this, I told the senator this. There hasn't been a lot revealed as far as what state the senator is in to have lengthy conversations as far as him weighing in on these issues. That was not covered in these statements. So I think this...
Just this morning, we did ask his office again for a statement. I did, and they said, thank you for asking, and then resent me the statement from last week before the 4th of July.
Basically saying he's recovering and that he's engaged.
Thanks, everybody, for his help. And then, all of a sudden, these social media posts started being rolled out one after another, and these reflections on what he has been, the conversations with him.
And this dates back, of course, the reason why all this reporting is coming out from these independent journalists, mainly on X and other social media platforms, all stem from these 911 calls, the dispatch audio, where you hear emergency personnel basically tell the dispatcher that they're performing CPR and that there's somebody reportedly in cardiac arrest at Mitch McConnell's D.C. home. Like, they never connect the dots, and his office hasn't, but it has been sort of assumed that is the senator. So that's where a lot of this has come from, these statements of, he's well, I'm talking to him about all the issues that's going on.
Our viewers have even been demanding to know more about what's going on. One woman said to me just today, if he were retired, this would be a whole different story. This would be the privacy thing we would respect, but he is our sitting senator. But I can tell you, following him for decades, he's extremely private when it comes to his health matters.
Sure.
He does not like to be seen in public as being infirm or being helped or even being shown in a wheelchair. He's always pushed back on that.
Right.
He's held it close to the vest, being very prideful in a sense like that. So
certainly with his recent,
yes,
falls and flu-like symptoms in early
they've always
February.
sort of approached his health like Fort Knox. They don't want to give out a lot of information.
Sure. Real quick, before we show you the dispatch audio, I do want to read this statement from Senate Whip John Barrasso, of course, a sitting member of Congress. He says he spoke by phone with McConnell this afternoon. And Doug, we do want to note that everyone's sort of saying they talked to him at different times, this morning, yesterday, this afternoon. He says, again, roughly for 20 minutes, per a Barrasso spokeswoman, including on the Graham Plattner scandal, speaking about the Maine U.S. Senate race and the recent Supreme Court ruling on coordinated spending limits.
A lot of the messages seem to be the same about having the same conversation.
The same topics.
Maybe that's because they're mostly all politicians, and that's what they want to talk about.
But that is what you're seeing on CNN, Fox News. No matter what you're seeing, political coverage, it has been these big national topics. And we do want to play for you, again, some of this audio. There wasn't a lot of it, but it certainly invited some feedback from some of the big political leaders in Kentucky just a few days ago. Dispatch calls from the day Senator Mitch McConnell was hospitalized last month reveal some of the communication from EMS workers after arriving at his D.C. home.
I had great communications. East Army supervisor, CPR in progress.
We hear that emergency medical crews perform CPR on a person the dispatcher describes as unconscious. It comes just 6 minutes after the dispatcher sent an advanced life support ambulance to the 84-year-old's home on the morning of June 14th. Then we hear the words cardiac arrest.
EMS to respond for cardiac arrest.
The attention and questions surrounding McConnell's health continue to grow, now on day 18 since he was admitted to the hospital. His office told us he's receiving excellent care and is engaged with Senate duties and Kentucky issues. But they also said he did not vote on Capitol Hill last week.
Do you believe his office has been straightforward enough with information?
Well, his office hasn't communicated with me.
Hours before McConnell's office confirmed he continues to recover in the hospital, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, a Democrat, said he did not want to speculate about his condition. But he did offer this to my question about transparency.
If he's been in the hospital for several weeks, they need to communicate more directly.
I don't think no information is necessarily good news, but it's not necessarily bad news either.
Republican State Representative John Hodgson of Fisherville tells me he last saw the senator this past Derby Day.
He's still walking around, but he is old. He's in poor health, and I just hope and pray that the senator will, pull through whatever difficulties he's having and continue to serve till the end of the year.
In a statement, Charles Booker, the Democratic nominee in the race to replace McConnell, voiced concern about McConnell's health, saying he's keeping the family in his thoughts. But he also stated, it's time we know what's happening. When we don't know if our senator is alert, conscious, or capable of serving, that's not a partisan question. It's a Kentucky one. Meanwhile, the Republican nominee in the race, Congressman Andy Barr, said, Kentucky is praying for a speedy recovery for Senator McConnell. We are grateful for his service to the Commonwealth. And obviously, Doug, we all wish the senator and his family well, but there are questions right now. There's a November election for Senator McConnell's seat, but he's not set to leave his seat until early January of 27. So if there were for any reason where maybe he wasn't in the state condition to fulfill the rest of his term, there are implications. There would be a special election under a state law that was passed in 24 here in Kentucky that essentially would allow each party to nominate a candidate, and then right there and then...
Most likely you would think Andy Barr...
And Charles Booker would be the two...
The nominee from on the Republican side would be nominated. And, of course, Mitch McConnell is supporting Andy Barr.
Yeah.
Big time. I think that's an important question because for many generations of Kentuckians, Mitch McConnell has just been ever present. Mm-hmm. It's going to be strange when he leaves that office anyway on his own, when he finally retires after 41 years.
Sure.
Because he's been so dominant. I came across today where I didn't realize it was in fact McConnell's own biography page posted on his website that Time magazine named him 3 times one of the most 100 influential people in the United States, 3 different times.
Yeah.
It goes to show you the extent of what we are dealing with here. So the special election is interesting because the power used to be with the Kentucky governor, and the state legislature ripped it away from the governor. When Andy Beshear was in office, they took it away from the Democrat.
He used to be able to theoretically appoint whoever he wants in that situation. Then they made it so that he would have to pick from a list of possibly 3 Republicans, and now it's to the point where...
Imagine if the governor had the ability now to put his own person in there The interim carries a lot of weight,
does.
as we saw what Mayor Craig Greenberg did in Louisville with the county clerk's position and David Yates. Pretty much anointed the next,
His
the
name's
next person in the office.
Yeah, you get your tags renewed. His face is on there, so he's the clerk. Even
So
though
the
it's an interim.
legislature,
Yeah.
I think, did not, because Kentucky's become so dominant Republican, did not want to give it that control. But it's another power they took away from the governor.
Sure. Yeah, and we'll certainly be following the senator's condition as we receive these sort of daily and weekly updates on how he's doing.